You also use this to heat shape foam. When you are heating it up, you can basically put the foam into any kind of contorted shape that it wants, and it will actually keep that shape unless if high heat is applied to it again. Now I know that I said earlier that I have this mat that has the grid and the ruler on it already, but when you are cutting out straight pieces, use an actual metal ruler on this. I have two different rulers for this. I have an 18-inch, and then I also have a 40-inch for very long pieces. I do recommend getting them with the foam on the back here, so then that way it doesn't slip and slide while you're in the middle of cutting. So make sure that you get at least the metal ones. Don't get plastic ones. The razor will go through that and then go through your finger. I would know.
How's my son?
He's going to be all right.
Oh,
Thank God. He's lost his left hand, so he's going to be...
I have two different rulers for this. I have an 18-inch, and then I also have a 40-inch for very long pieces. I do recommend getting them with the foam on the back here, so then that way it doesn't slip and slide while you're in the middle of cutting. So make sure that you get at least the metal ones. Don't get plastic ones. The razor will go through that and then go through your finger. I would know.
how's my son?
He's going to be all right.
Oh,
Thank God. He's lost his left hand, so he's going to be all right.
you son of a...
This one I kind of debated on whether or not if I should put it on here, but I use it for every project when it comes to foam, and that is going to be Plasti Dip. This is what seals the foam to help it be water resistant, and it also applies paint very well. I use it on all my foam pieces, and I always recommend to do Plasti Dip, at least 3 coats of it for every single EVA foam project. When you are going to be using this stuff, make sure that you put it in a little bucket of warm water for about 5 minutes, not boiling. Make it warm, so then that way when it sprays out, it comes out as a fine mist rather than just like these little splotchy mist. So make sure that you are warming this up beforehand and really give it a good shake. Now, this next one is actually the workhorse of the shop, and it is my Dremel. When I first started out, this was the thing that helped me out so much, and I know it will help you out too. This is the normal Dremel itself. There's normally a small little chuck on it, and you have to sand it like this. Because your hand cramps really bad if you're just holding it like this constantly as you're shaving it, apply this flexible shaft to your Dremel, and then that way it's like holding a pen. And you're just very easily just sanding things down. It's very nice, and I absolutely love this. If you get a Dremel, definitely make sure that you have the flexible shaft.
What did he say?
Don't demonetize me, YouTube. So after you piece 2 pieces of foam together, you have a seam that you now have to clean up. So what I typically use to clean that seam up is going to be air dry foam clay. Now, of course, there's something out there called just cosplay clay as well, but it's just air dry clay. Use a little bit of water and this onto the seam line, and then that will actually clean that up. Let it fully dry before sealing it. And of course, because people will bring it up, you have Quick Seal as well. Quick Seal is a silicone-based, like pure caulk. I want to pronounce that right.
Just go to your local home improvement store and ask for the big black...
That will basically act the same exact way. Only downside though, that, I mean, when I was working with this, is that it doesn't want to sand very well at all. And so that was my biggest problem with working with this, as well as it dries up and I can't use it. This, I know that if I leave this alone for a year, this will be okay as long as if it is properly sealed. This though, I put the cap on, I made sure that it was closed, but it still has completely just hardened on the inside, and I can't use it. And it's $6 every single time I go to the store for this. This is $6, and I've just picked this up instead, and it will last me a whole lot longer, and I'm able to sand it down. Personally, I like the air dry foam clay. If you are Team Quick Seal, hey, you do you, boo. I forgot which tool we're at now. I'll probably just put the number in there somewhere. But this is the bonus one. This is going to be the belt sander. So much like how the Dremel is the workhorse of my shop, slowly it's kind of transitioning to have it be the belt sander, because when I'm
Okay, belt sander, no. What the fuck? That's way too expensive.
Sean Connery just came over there. When you're sanding and shaping things down, it is much easier and faster to do it with a belt sander. Granted, though, be very careful with it. I have sanded my knuckles before because of this, and it
No, wait, they're
hurt
actually...
bad. So just be very
some are
careful
pretty
when
cheap.
you are using it. The nice thing is that you can change out the belts on it from an 80 grit to a 1000 grit. And when I use a 1000 grit on foam, it makes it
How big are
smooth.
they?
So if you
Oh.
happen to have a space that's big enough to have a belt sander. Also, wear your respirator because that dust gets everywhere and it gets up in your nostrils.
Yeah, they're pretty big.
You'll have foam boogies for the longest time. What was I saying? But if you have to just work with the Dremel, that works just fine too. Sandpaper also works too. So I think that's it for the tools. I think we did pretty good today. But, you know, if I forgot anything, I know you guys will let me know in the comments. I know you will. But with that being said...
Hello guys, this is Svetlana from Cosplay, and today I'm talking about my top 10 useful cosplay crafting tools I need to create my costumes. So the reason why I'm creating this video is because I'm getting a lot of questions from people who are asking me how to start with cosplay. So let's start with number 1, the hot glue gun. I got my hot glue gun 15 years ago when I just got into cosplay, and I'm loving this tool because it already rescued so many of my costumes, especially in the middle of the night when I tried to finish a costume just before a convention. It's super useful just to hot glue stuff together so it gets really hot and this thing is melting, and then you just glue all the things on. And since it's actually getting so hot, be really careful because you get all the burning marks. I just got one yesterday. Number 2, scissors. So I have plenty of scissors, all of them at the
Hot air gun, Dremel.
And this thing actually allows me to work much surely sew everything by hand or hot glue it together, which I actually never did. But the sewing machine is a very handy tool to work nice and clean and fast, and it just makes so many things so a cosplay will be quite. Number 8, the dress form. A dress form.
Okay, so far.
Hello guys! First, EVA foam because it's a little bit more like wobbly and it's easier to shape armor with it. And I use the gray high density EVA foam mostly for props like the Diva gun or my gas rifle because it's a little bit more solid, it's easier, at least in my opinion, to Dremel it, and it's simply a little bit more durable. You also get the foam in different thicknesses like 10mm, 5mm, and also 2mm, which is great for making details or like different layers and all kind of stuff. So make sure when you order it, get it like in this really big sheets. Order a lot of it because you will need all of the foam to make all of the costumes and props. And yeah, have fun crafting. And aside of the low density and high density EVA foam, you can also get this plaster sewed, or if you Google for it, LED foam, and it's actually useful for diffusing lights. So in case you're installing LEDs,
The hell is LED foam? What the? What is LED foam? I gotta look this up. Hmm. Or
hello guys, this is
what? She said
your
LED foam, right?
costume.
No, I
You
don't know.
can put this material on top and it spreads your lights very nice and evenly so you don't get this ugly spots, but instead like having everything pretty in
That's
your
sick.
costumes. So get this as well if you're working with lights. Number 2, like clay, but it dries out like got me into armor making. It's a thermoplastic material, and you have larger than life becoming barrels or the core. In addition, thermoplastic material, and you have to heat it up with a heat gun. And once it becomes actually warm, it becomes soft, so you can shape it, you can cut it with a normal pair of scissors, and especially it sticks to itself, so you don't need any glue to actually make a really, really cool armor. So basically, if you don't have a lot of space, if you don't have a lot of tools, everything you need to create a really cool costume out of the material is a heat gun and a pair of scissors. So this material is just perfect for beginners. Sadly,
What's it
material
called?
has a few downsides.
Warbler?
First, it's quite pricey compared to EVA foam, and it's also quite heavy compared to EVA foam. So in case you want to make a really, really big project, this could be a problem. In addition,
Warbler.
it also melts in heat, as I said. So in case you're living in California and want to dress up at a summer con, this might be not the best material to choose. Number 4, PVC pipes. PVC pipes are super useful if you're making costumes that are, for example, larger than life. So you can use these things here as a skeleton build, for example. I also saw people using them for wings. And I use them as cores for the construction of props. Like sometimes they becoming barrels or the core of a long staff or even a sword. So these are really, really cool and handy and useful. And you can also bend them with heat. And if you find a pipe that actually fits into each other, you can also use them for transportation of your props. So you can like take them apart and like put them together with magnets, for example. So get them, they're really cool. Really handy when it comes to working with EVA foam as well as wobbler. For example, I'm using them for my breastplates, and I basically heat up the material, pull it over it, and then I have a great mold which I can use for my breastplates, for example. You can also roughen up the surface with sanding paper, put some LEDs into it, paint a sphere, put like some fabric into it to diffuse the light, and then you have like a magical orb which looks really, really cool. I used one of these small spheres, for example, as a light source for one of my druid armor. And since you can find them not only in different sizes, but also different shapes, like for example hearts or eggs or even gemstones, they are quite useful for all kind of things, so keep your eyes open for them. And since we're talking about lights, let's go to number 6. Haha, LED strips. So we know lights are absolutely awesome, but something that is even more awesome are animated lights. So instead of just lighting up blue, they can like be flashy blue. Instead of just orange, they can be like pulsing orange. And instead of just being like red, they can be
Alright, that's too advanced.
and yeah, well
What?
as fake fur are simply easier to handle. So almost all of my costumes include some fake fur or fake leather. It's maybe for some fluffy things on my armor or fluffy things on my weapons. Maybe there are boot straps or like boot covers, maybe or faking a specific look, and shapewear is a great way to do it. For my Symmetra costume, for example, she had a very slim waist and like everything was like very fitting. So I used this thing here, so my costume looks actually like more smooth. Or if, for example, if I'm wearing any short dresses or anything, I'm also wearing some dancing tights, so my legs simply look a little bit more like shaped. If you like it, just use it, and if not, that's totally fine as well, because at the end, we're all just human beings, right? Number 9, lace front wigs. Haha. Back then, when I got into cosplay, the only way to change your hair color was actually to spray paint all your hair. But now, we have high quality wigs available, and
Oh shit.
especially these so-called lace front wigs. And as you can see, here is a mesh, which you actually have to cut off, and then you can glue it on to your skin actually. So this wig doesn't look like a wig at all and actually looks like your real hair, which makes costumes even more believable. In addition, lace front wigs often also have more hair in, which do some mistakes and like fail and like start crying with it. And amazing foam for beginners if you want to get started with armor and prop making and cosplay in general. Foam Smith trilogy. And yeah, then Grace from Sammy's workshop, she made an amazing guide for beginners if you want to get started with armor and prop making and cosplay in general. Or for example, Vero, who made a really cool tutorial book for armor and leatherwork.
Who the hell's calling me?
Or we also have the Kohaku, which is a cosplay magazine, and it's filled with amazing tutorials about all kinds of techniques and materials. Really like it. But I also have books of big publishers, for example, like this.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I know it's been a while since I dropped a new video. I've been real busy. I haven't been slacking off. I haven't quit cosplaying. I've been doing the exact opposite, actually. I've been busy building all kinds of new cosplays. As you can see, I worked on my Batman Beyond. I got War Machine, and I got, well, I got a bunch of other cool stuff. I'll cover that in an upcoming video. It was about this subscribers. Yeah.
For different thickness of foam, it's important to keep your blades sharp. I got this knife sharpener from Walmart in the camping section. It allows me to use my blades over and over. And this one's probably my favorite blade. It doesn't cut for nothing, but it does right. And has this really cool sound effect too. And always gotta have a pair of.
Hello everyone, I'm Joey from Lock.
Welcome to the shop. Steve here at SKS Props, and in this video I want to show you guys some of the basic tools and techniques that it takes to be a foam fabricator. Now, for those that are not familiar with my particular work, I am a multi-award winning foam smith. I love foam, and I love it so much that I developed my own line of high-density foam products specifically designed for prop and costume fabrication. Blick and I partnered up not long ago, so they carry my HD foam, foam dowels, and the ever-popular foam clay online and in select stores. This particular video, we're just going to go over the basics of the different tools you need and different techniques to get you started on your journey to be a foam smith. So let's kick things off by talking about the material itself. Blick will be carrying my HD foam in thicknesses of 2, 6, and 10 millimeter. Those sheets are 24 inches by 60 inches, so that is a lot of material to be able to craft with. Now, if you haven't used EVA before, I am a huge fan of it because it's an extremely versatile material, but it's also very light. So it's great for cosplay and for props because it's con safe. You can carry it around all day. Now, the things that separate my HD foam from a lot of the others that are out there is that it is a high density foam, so it cuts and it sands beautifully. The other thing that's great is the fact that it's light gray, which means you do not have to use markers on this to transfer any of your templates. You could use a ballpoint pen or pencil, which is going to make your templates a lot more accurate. Now, along with my HD foam sheets, Blick will also be carrying my HD foam dowels. The dowels will be round, half round, and bevel. They'll come in sizes of 10, 15, and 20 millimeter. There are 2 of them per pack, and each one of them is 36 inches in length. Now, this is going to give you an opportunity to add some really quick and easy details to your costumes and props. And last but not least, we have the ever-popular foam clay. Foam clay is great for your props and costumes, especially if you're trying to get an organic look to it. You can sculpt with this material by hand. The moisture will eventually wick out of it, so it becomes hard, but it still retains its ability to be extremely light, which is great for cosplay. Now that you have your character or prop references ready to go, you need to start thinking about construction and your templates. Now, there's a couple different ways to do templates. There are websites out there that will have PEP files available, which are computer-generated files that you can download and put together like a puzzle piece. You could also do it a lot more traditional, which is typically what I do. I hand draw most of my templates because I do a lot more custom creations. So if you're doing that, I prefer to use Bristol board. Bristol board is like a thicker cardstock, but it holds up really well for doing templates because you can actually hold it up to your mannequins, duct tape dummies, or a friend to get all the armor situated that you need. Now, this is a shield that I had done. That was a custom creation, again, drawn onto the Bristol board. You can see the back of it, though. I've done a lot of different iterations where I've changed it. And that's going to happen. You know, when you're doing these types of templates, you got to still take into consideration the thickness of the foam. So a lot of times they change. but it's great to have a starting point with your build. Before we talk about some of the basic tools to use, one thing I want to bring up and that I feel is very important is safety. Make sure that you always do set it aside enough along with all of your tools to get the proper safety equipment. That includes eye protection. I prefer ones that are shatterproof. A decent dust mask, and that's because our foam does generate quite a bit of particulates into the air when using a rotary tool, and an organic filter mask, and that's because we use solvents, we use spray paints, we will make sure none of that is getting into us. So moving on to the workstation itself, this isn't really the kind of hobby that you want to be doing on your kitchen table. So out here in the shop, I have a piece of butcher paper down, and I have a self-healing mat. I feel self-healing mats are really important because most of the work you do with foam fabrication is going to be cutting it. So having a self-healing mat allows the blade to go all the way through the material and into the surface. This does two things. It'll give you a nice clean cut, it protects the edge of the blade, and most importantly, it protects the tip of the blade. Now this particular one that I have out here is put out by Blick. It is a 36-inch by 24-inch, so that gives you a lot of room. So if you're doing a nice big piece of chest armor or a shield or something, you're not going to be running off, so you can have a continuously nice cut. Next to that, I always have a pencil and pen on hand. This is how I do all of my template transfers nowadays because the foam is light gray, so I've noticed that my templates come out a lot more accurate. Now when it comes to the blades, honestly, I've got 3 of them that I use pretty much all the time, and this is really all that you need. 3 blades. One is kind of a bigger, heavy duty. This is great for 10mm foam. One that's kind of a mid-range, that's great for a 6mm foam, and then a little detail scalpel blade that's great for 2mm foam, and also for scoring and doing a heat treatment to it to make the foam open up. This is great for that. So for the best type of cutting technique, you want to make sure that the blade remains completely straight up and down. You don't want it at an angle unless you're specifically trying to get a bevel. Notice I'm using a metal ruler here. Press all the way through the material into the cutting mat itself and then pull in one straight cut. This is going to give you the cleanest cut possible. So you have all your pieces cut out for your prop or costume, and now it is time to clean them up. And we're going to do that using a rotary tool. A rotary tool is going to be one of the most important tools in your arsenal for being a foam fabricator. It's going to allow you to clean up all your edges, round them over, and start giving the foam character. Now there are a lot of different rotary tools that are on the market, and they're going to range in price anywhere from $20 to several $100s. So just make sure that you get one that's in your budget and it works for you. When it comes to the features of the rotary tool, the biggest thing that I tell you to look for is one that has a flex shaft. Without the flex shaft, the sanding drum will just go right here on the end, but then you're dealing with the weight of the tool itself when you're working around your piece. Having a flex shaft, it's a lot more natural feeling and it's a lot more flexible, and so you have that agility to work around the piece in a lot more fluid way. Now along with the rotary tool, usually you will get a box of accessories. The most important in here, of course, being your sanding drums. This particular Dremel series comes with a coarse one and a medium grit one. The coarse one works great for taking away a lot of foam really quick. The fine one I use as a second pass to smooth everything out. And then for a third pass, I like to use stone bits. You set these to the highest RPM, and what it does is it actually cauterizes the foam and it gives it a very smooth appearance. And remember, whenever you're using your rotary tool, make sure that you're always practicing shop safety. So whenever I use mine, I always have my eye protection and a proper dust mask. For demonstration purposes, we have our foam that has been rounded over using our rotary tool, and now we're going to pretend as though these are pieces that need to be assembled to create our final prop or costume, which means we're going to talk about adhesives. But before we get to that, I actually want to talk about heat sealing foam real fast. And to be clear, you actually do not have to heat seal my foam. You could just go ahead and seal this with Plasti-Dip or Flex Bond and paint it, and it would be good to go. Plasti-Dip or any other type of a sealant on there, it has something to bite into. Now while we're on the subject of heat guns, let me talk about one real fast. This is one that Blick carries. It's put out by Wagner, and I really like the design for 2 reasons. Number one, you have these fins on the side, so after you're done using it, if you set it down, the heat source is not in contact with the surface of your top. That way you're not accidentally burning or melting anything here. Number 2 is you have these 2 additional foot stabilizations on the bottom there. And so it's completely hands-free. You can actually be manipulating something up above it and have a direct heat source without actually having to hold it. So if you've got a large piece that you're trying to manipulate, you can do that all hands-free. So this is definitely one that I would look into if you're needing a heat gun. I just really like the safety precautions that are on it. Now, when I first started building props and costumes, I of course just used hot glue, which there's nothing wrong with that. The only problem that I ran into is when I made an armor set and I was walking in a parade in Atlanta and it was summertime, a lot of my hot glue has started to fail on me. So nowadays I use contact cements and super glues for a lot of my builds. Now that being said, if you are going to use hot glue, and I still do with certain aspects of my costume, such as if I'm adding fur or other types of linings to the inside of the foam itself, these Surebond hot glue guns work really well, and they've got a few design things that I really like about them. So number one, this is the larger one. This is a high temp, and it's all cordless, which I think is great because the cord gets in the way so many times. So if you have this charging and you need to use it for a little bit, it'll actually run for 2 minutes before it needs to be recharged again and get the glue back to an optimal temperature. The other thing I like is that it has a silicone pad here, so if it does drip additional glue out of it, it's not, again, getting onto your surface, it's getting on the silicone pad. Same thing with this little guy, so I've got a large one, and I have a small one that has a detail tip on there. So if I'm wanting to make sure that some of the small wires that I'm using inside of my masks or costumes aren't going to be moving around, I like to use the little detail one to make sure that I'm just not getting hot glue all over the place. So both of these Surebond ones are really cool, and if you're using hot glue, it's definitely something I would look at. If you're going with the contact cements, of course there's lots of ones that are out there. This particular one is a Weldwood. I also use Barge quite often. And then as far as your super glues, you have lots of those to choose from as well. So when it comes to putting together pieces like this, a lot of times I do a double adhesive method, where if it's a large piece, I'll do contact cement for the majority of it, and then I use super glue around the perimeter, and that way I'm making sure that if one glue fails, the other one will actually step up in its place. So when it comes to gluing sections together like this, like if I had these two smaller pieces, what I like to do is actually take a pencil, mark where that one is going to be on the front and on the back. That way I'm not overusing my glue in areas I do not need it. And just for this particular instance, I'm going to use the super glue just because it's not a large piece. I usually use the super glue when it comes to a lot of the smaller detail pieces just on its own. So that is now going to be set. That's really not going to go anywhere. Even if you were to bend this, you can tell there's still a lot of strength with that super glue holding these together. But I've used all different types of adhesives so far on my foam, and I have not found anything that hasn't worked yet. Now that we have our foam pieces cleaned up and assembled, we can start thinking about sealing it. And there's lots of different types of materials that you could use to seal your foam. You could use white glue or Mod Podge. Me personally, I like brands like Plastidip and Flexbond. Both of these work great because if your armor is to ever get crushed, you can use a heat gun and it will actually pop back out without distorting the surface. Now the big difference between these two, Plastidip is not really safe to use inside. You want to make sure to use this in a well-ventilated area. If you're going for a non-toxic version, Flexbond is great because you can add your acrylic paints directly to it and apply that to the foam. So you have your completed proper costume. It has been sealed and is ready for paint. Now painting is an extremely important step because you could have an amazing prop and a poor paint job and it could ruin it. You could have an okay prop and a stellar paint job. Now painting is an extremely important step, not really safe to use. I like you can use a heat gun and it will actually pop back out without distorting the surface. Now the big difference between these two, Plastidip is not really safe to use inside. You want to make sure to use this in a well-ventilated area. If you're going for a non-toxic version, Flexbond is great because you can add your acrylic paints directly to it and apply that to the foam. So you have your completed proper costume. It has been sealed and is ready for paint. Now painting is an extremely important step because you could have an amazing prop and a poor paint job and it could ruin it. You could have an okay prop and a stellar paint job and it will look great. Now when it comes to me, I usually like to do a primer base on top of the Plastidip. So I'll do a rattle can of a primer, usually in a black or in a red, and that just gives it a nice base for whatever colors you're going to be building up on top. Now as far as the layers after that, there are a couple different ways that you can go. You could airbrush, or you could hand paint. Me personally, I like to hand paint most of my stuff, but I was an illustration major, so I've been hand painting all my life. I have friends that all they do is airbrush, and there's no right or wrong way, it's just whatever works for you. If you do airbrush, I prefer ones that have a dual action, which means that you're able to press down to get the air flowing, and you pull back, and that sends the paint out. So when it comes to hand painting your props, of course, brushes are key, and there are a ton of them to choose from. And then for a third pass, I like to use stone bits. You set squeezing the foam in and attaching it, that way it will keep. To a symbol is the one that's base color. On my second pass of the Mars Black, I'm using less water and more pigment. I'm also making sure that my filbert brush is fully loaded so that when I place it into the recesses of the helmet, I can then feather it out. To give the helmet a little bit of an accent color, I'm going to be switching over to the Golden brand line of acrylic paints. For all the face details here, I'm going to be painting those.
Hello everybody, do some research. There's foam gauntlet. Now
Welcome to the shop. Steve here at SKS Props, and today I'm going to show